At the moment I'm just having a look at the shift mechanism that I'm putting into my FXR 5-speed. It's from a later 20 cam 5-speed, so it's the roller drum and detent. So the roller detent here and the roller drum with its ball bearings on either end, versus the older style which had needle rollers here, and this just had like a plunger arrangement that went on the drum instead of the roller. So these are apparently a far improved setup. They also come with the flat spring here, which are less prone to breaking. They're similar to the Baker ones, what I've seen of the Baker ones anyway. So apparently this is a very good setup. I've got all these parts except the circlip, which I'll just get from a local hardware place, and the bushing. So the bushing that's come in my new Delcron trans case, this is a new old stock case, Delcron one, is for the older style shifter shaft. So I'll just pick the camera up in a moment, we'll have a look. The shift drum, the shift bushing that's in it at the moment is too short. Anyway, it's easier if I pick this up, we'll have a look. So at the moment I've got the shift mechanism in the transmission. We can see that it shifts fine, everything moves nicely. Okay, everything's bolted in. If we have a look here, we can see it's the newer type. So if we have a look at the shift shaft here, that's about where it needs to be as far as the circlip groove arrangement. So it could probably be in a tiny bit more, but that's pretty much where it needs to be, right there. So, and we can see that that's centered nicely on the shift drum itself. Why that's important is when we shift gears and this lunges forward, we can see, like so, I can just do that. You can see the recess that's in the side of that pillow block and where the spring actually sits inside of there, okay? That's where it needs to be. If we don't change out the bushing, if we just stick with the older bushing, and if I just push this sideways back over to where it would be with the current bushing, we can see that the shaft now sticks out another probably at least 1/4 inch or so. I'll have to measure it. I'll get the I'll depth gauge that with the set of verniers. But more importantly, we can see now this doesn't line up very nicely here. It does sort of just engage on the pins here. It's right off to one side, and the spring and this pin here, if we change gears now, we can see that it fouls on the pillow block and the bolt head here. So the reason for the updated shaft. So again, if we bring that over somewhere there, you can see it's far more central, and we change gears again, much nicer. So I need to push this all the way across, measure the difference that I have here, how much, or what overhang I've got here, push out my old bushing, where it stops on the circlip groove, the difference is 233 thousandths. So what I'll do now is I'll have to make up a small pulling tool to get in here and pull the bushing out, and it'll just pull out, and I'll make a new bushing out of probably some bronze or some, I've got 4140 there, I could make it out of that I suppose, either bronze or 4140. It's just, I had to thread this hole out, it was just needed tapped out, and this, I ran a die over this. You can just see where I've clearanced it right at the base of the head of this socket head cap screw, just so that it winds in all the way flush with the case now, so it winds in really nice without any binding at all. So just wind that in and it goes home all the way just by hand. So when I put this in and seal it up, I'll just use some Loctite thread pipe thread sealant. I won't use tape on that, so that should work really nicely. Alright, I don't know how good this audio is going to be. The puller's in. I've come through from the other side to do it. Just a nice and straighter pull with this machine surface in here. Pulling on the transmission housing in here, it wasn't sitting nice and square and flush. I've loaded it up. It's cracked it, started to move, and I'm about to load up on it with this. We're doing it by hand, but I'm sick of that, so I'll give this a go, see what happens. Helps if you go the right way. There we go. Bushing's out. Awesome. Puller worked really good. And there it is. Well, that's nice and hot. There's the bushing here. It's just come out. It's not too bad actually, so we'll mic that up, we'll measure it up, see what we've got. The puller worked really nice. Again, that was against the housing. That machine service was to fit inside there. And pulled it straight out. That worked really well. I'm happy with that. Alright, I'll find some material. I might make up a new bushing. New bushing for the updated shifter assembly for my Deltron 5-speed. It's 233 thou longer, made out of 4140. Just need to press it into the case and do the final ream out. Alright, hopefully this audio works out alright. I don't have a mic on at the moment, so this is straight through the smartphone's mic. So I've fitted up my new 4140 bush for my gear selector for the new updated shift drum. So this is a roller type shifter for my FXR transmission build. One thing I just wanted to make a quick note of here. What I've noticed, I'll zoom in here, see if this works. Not too much. What I wanted to make sure was, as I selected gears and the shifter throws forward, was that the spring here didn't connect or touch the shift drum itself, just to stop any wear from happening, that's all. So if we have a look at where the circlip actually sits, and I'll bring that back out. I don't have a circlip on the shaft at the moment, so about there is where the circlip will sit and hold it. So you can see now there's nice clearance there between the pull spring. So that goes up and down. It doesn't actually contact the shift drum. Bring that back out to where it has to sit, somewhere there. So there's a nice bit of clearance just there, as well as the pillow block. This boss here doesn't collect or connect to the other side here, so there's a nice, it's central to the selector mechanism itself. The spring's not touching here and there's no contact over this side. So if you have a look down here further, you'll see I'm just holding it there as I video. That's where the circlip groove is, so it can't go any further in this way towards the shift drum. What I'll show is it has got a little bit of play, like if we pull that all the way out, so it has got a bit of play in it, but still, as that throws forward, it still doesn't connect here. So there'll be a tiny bit of float in the end of that, in that shaft. It's probably 20 thou. But the main thing is I didn't want this spring contacting the drum. Otherwise, obviously, you'd wear the end off that spring and have issues. And as everybody knows, a pain in the ass, because you've got to strip the transmission down to get your shift shaft out. So I didn't want to bust that spring just for something so silly as not checking clearances. So there you go. So that's it. Right forward there, clear of the drum. Circlip grooves lined up there. It's probably a probably a millimetre gap there. You can't really tell from the angle where the camera is. I'll see if I can. It makes it a bit hard, but just between here is probably a millimetre gap. And we have a look over here. You can see this fits in this area nicely in here. But like I said, it will float a tiny bit out. That's it there. Hang on. That's where the circlip will sit when it's right forward, and if it does float sideways, that's as far as it'll go, so it's still got plenty of clearance there. If I wanted to, I could shim up. I could shim this up just to minimise any float in that, like make a thicker washer to fully, let me zoom out. I'm getting used to this new camera gimbal. So to stop this end float here, what I could do is make up a thicker washer, which would fully pull it out even further, which is what I might do. Looking at it now, if I fully pull that out, that's dead centre to the selector. So I may just get a bit of stock and just machine up a new washer just to pack that out. That'll hold it nice and centred, has full throw on the selector itself, and that keeps that spring well away from contacting that drum. Anyway, just wanted to record that. On to the next step, which will be, I want to do a final mic up and final mic and of the shift shaft. It needs, it's a pretty tight fit at the moment. It's only about 1/3 clearance. I think I might open this up a bit, so I'll pull this shaft out. I'll get the internal mic and we'll measure that up. I may just run a reamer through that quickly just to make sure we've got a nice bit of clearance there. I don't want too much. I think factory, the one I measured up was 3/1000. If I can go for 2, I'll be happy with that. All right. All right, back again. So just measured this up. It's 1/1000 clearance. Maybe a touch over, a couple of tenths over, but it's very nice. So I'm just going to leave that that tolerance where it is. To get that in there, and you feel that it's so smooth. There's no binding, but it's nice and tight, you know. Good clearance, moves nice and free, but good and tight, you know. Not going to flop around everywhere. And also, just quickly, I suppose this is the puller I made up to do the bushing. So it's just a piece of threaded rod. I've used 8mm rod, 8 by 1.25. That's what I had laying around. I did initially design it with 1/4 UNC, but it was not heavy enough. So you could use, what's that, 5/16, I suppose, it's similar. So it's just a piece of threaded rod. There's a nut on both ends. So this end here is a nut as well. And it's just a collar that sits inside of the bushing with a thread, internal thread. So that goes inside the casing, like so. Then the rest of this, which is just, it's a 2-piece design. It's just made up of stuff I had laying around. This end here has been recessed just so it can fit inside here. This was a bit big, so this way it wouldn't go, so I just recessed, took a bit off. Goes in there nicely, and then it's got an end cap on here. Put your threaded rod through, and it just picks up the nut on the other side, like so. So you just wind it in, yeah, like so. Wind it all the way in, and as you do the nut, obviously that slides through the casing, like so. This slides through the bushing like so, pulls on it nice and square, and as you do up the nut on the other side, like so, that end cap goes on here, you do the nut up and it pulls it through the case. Nice and square, nice and easy. I used a bit of lube just to help it lube up to go through, no binding. Yeah, it's turned out really nice. Next thing will be to, now I've done that, I'm happy where it is. I need to make up a washer for here and centre up that shifter like I said previously. It'll probably be to clean this case. I'll give it a wash in some hot water. I have deburred it since I've got it, but it does need a good clean out with some hot soapy water. And then I'll look at installing some bearings. Obviously the lay shaft bearing will get pressed in. I'll press that one in. And this one obviously gets pulled in with a puller. I need to, I've done 5 speeds before obviously, but I usually just dodgy something up to use as a puller, a piece of flat bar and a bit of threaded rod, but I want to try and make something a bit nicer this time, so I'll endeavour to machine something up on the lathe till then to install the main shaft bearing and fifth gear. Right,